Today we are talking about what users, roles and incidents within Jamf School. So hopefully this will be a useful presentation for you to understand just how users are used within Jamf School and where we can use roles as administrators to create different accessibility for different people within our school environment, and how the unused and highly unused and underutilised incidents is used within Jamf School. So as I did touch on, we have many different types of users within Jamf School. So we have our administrators. If you have access to a Jamf School console, you are an administrator of Jamf School. We have our students, which are just under our users, but they are identified within Jamf School as a student user or as a teacher user. We also, in some environments, not particularly in this one, but we do have parents as well. So you can create users as parents where we actually have parents that have access to control their students' devices with our Jamf Parent app. So users in Jamf School are used in a number of different ways. So why do we create these users in Jamf School, and why is it important to have identity within Jamf School? They can be used during enrolment to ensure that only authenticated users are able to enrol a device and to assist with device assignment, so we know who the device belongs to. User information can be used in profile payloads with variables, allowing for personalisation and customisation to happen based on the user that's assigned. That user information can also be used to create smart device groups. Based on bringing that user group information across, or user class information across, we can create really dynamic workflows using our smart device groups to create automated enrolment workflows where IT don't have to touch the device. The device automatically gets signed to the correct users and groups and receives the apps that it needs to. And of course, finally, shared iPad. So with our shared iPads, we know that we have to have our class information available to our iPads so that they know who's going to be using the shared iPad, and that user information is really important for that in that functionality. So within Jamf School, we have a number of ways to create users. Now, something that you may or may not know is that Jamf School actually holds its own identity information. So when we are creating a user within Jamf School, it's actually creating that in its own user database. So if you are to be using a cloud-based user authentication, we're actually creating that user with a password that they can use from their identity provider. So our user authentication is one way that we can get users into Jamf School. So we can turn on user authentication at our enrolment time, and when that user authenticates, that will create a user entry for that user in Jamf School. But it only gives us the user creation. It doesn't give us any group information, and it doesn't give us any options to use that information to customize that workflow and build out a full view of that user. So we can also use other methods such as Apple School Manager, LDAP, and we can also do manual CSV imports. But what we can do with these is we can actually layer them. So we can use our user authentication to create that user, and then Apple School Manager will also hold that information. We can use that information, the user information, to match against that. And we're going to go through and look at all these different scenarios and ways that we can build up that user information with these three methods of creation in Jamf School. So let's take a look at where we configure that authentication piece first. So as I said, we can use our identity providers to do that authentication. And in the DFE environment, we're using Microsoft Entra ID. Unfortunately, at this stage, Okta is not supported here, as I know that you are an Okta house. But you can also use options around an internal LDAP or Google authentication. You can also create the users manually directly into the Jamf School identity, which would mean that you wouldn't need an identity provider at all. These details are configured at the top level. So these have all been configured for you, and there's nothing that you need to worry about with them, but it's just nice to know that they're there. So as we know from our previous slide, authentication provides us with user creation and password sync, but it does not give us access to any group information. However, we're remembering that Jamf School maintains its own identity database, so we can layer on other methods for user creation to build out a full user information in groups. So let's take a look where we use this authentication and how this impacts the user experience. So within our automated device enrolment profiles, and Tom has created you a number of templates that you can clone across your environments, you can see that he has created them with enrolment or without enrolment. With enrolment authentication or without authentication. When we use that with enrolment authentication, we're able to create that user at the time of enrolment. So that's where we're authenticating against our Entra ID with our school DFE, email address and password. So this might be for our students or it might be for our teachers, and that device is being immediately assigned at enrolment to that user. So if we were to have a look into one of these automated device enrolment profiles, we can see where our require authentication for enrolment has been turned on, and we can see there that we've got the make authenticated user the device owner. So we've got, from the beginning of our enrolment, we've started to build up that user profile. We've brought across their username details and we've assigned them to their device. So we've, the next level we can do is we can get some additional information through Apple School Manager. So Apple School Manager, as you would know, contains class information. We don't get to bring across our group information, and therefore we don't get to create those dynamic profile workflows yet. But we will touch on what exactly we get from Apple School Manager and how that's been configured in your environment. It looks like I've got a, this is Tom's slide, so that's why I didn't know how it worked. So I did steal this slide from a previous presentation that Tom has done, just to touch base on how DFE South Australia gets that information into your centralised Apple School Manager. So you're using an integration called Wand EduSync that is pulling the school information from your SED system into Apple School Manager, and then that is being synchronised with the central Jamf school. And that brings across all our class information, which includes our students and our teachers, and who are a part of which class. So here you can see that we've created, with Apple School Manager, we can match our user that authenticated at enrolment and build out further information. So we can add them to a class. We still don't get our group membership, so we can use it for pre-building smart groups based on our class membership information, but we don't get all of that information. So there is reasons that we want to layer on some additional information to be building out really dynamic workflows. So let's have a look at the Apple School Manager configuration. And this is where we can set some settings. It's all been set for you at the top level, but you can see here that you can enable the synchronization of classes. You can see here that we can create missing users. So users that have been created in Apple School Manager through our EduSync Wand can be created automatically in Jamf School. If they did already exist in Jamf School, then that's where the matching would happen. So the match would already happen if you had already created that user in some other way, either through the user authentication method or through a manual import. Those users would match provided their username and their email address matched the information within Jamf School, and it was able to identify those. So we can see that setting there under match settings and what it will use to try and identify that user and make sure that it's not creating multiple users of the same user, multiple entries of the same user, sorry. And the final method that we have is our manual CSV imports. This is an option that can be, once again, layered on top to our previous options to bring us some additional attributes to our users. One of the key components of using this manual import method is that we can assign users to groups. So we can assign users within that manual CSV import into groups, and we can also assign the device in that manual import if we already know what serial number of device a user is going to receive. We can populate that information straight through in that manual import. So once again, we could do all of our creation with our manual import, but if the user did already exist, it would match that information. So once you build these 3 different methods of getting users into Jamf School, you can actually build up a really dynamic workflow. So I'll just quickly have a look at what it looks like for the import of users. So under organisation and import synchronize, we have a number of options for importing users into Jamf School. So here we can see we can import users. So this would be teachers or students. And we can also import parents if we needed to bring across any parent information for using Jamf Parent. We can actually create usernames and passwords for our parents to be able to authenticate into Jamf School to be able to pair with their student's device and do some controls around that. So here you can see what's needed to build up that import CSV file. Now, while a manual CSV file, and we probably all shudder when we hear that word, requires a bit of manual work, often this information is already available somewhere in a very similar format that you can just export, and often we only need to be updating this information perhaps once a year, if we're unlucky, once a term. So we can use this user import information to build up our groups. We can even create passwords if we want to create a password optionally inside Jamf School. And this is a really great way for if you were using that user authentication method, you might want to create a username for your little kids with a password that's the same for all of them. The only time when it's going to be used is when they're authenticating to enrol that device. So if you still wanted to have that enrollment authentication happening, but your younger students, you didn't want to have them remember a password to do that, you can pop a password in here and that password will be used for that authentication. So with all 3 of these methods, we can build up a good user base of information to be able to build really dynamic workflows but within Jamf School. So using our auth from the EIDP, we can get the user assigned during enrolment. We can bring information across from Apple School Manager, which I did forget to mention, that would also bring across their managed Apple account and put that onto their user information. We can create our classes within Jamf School and have our teachers and students assigned. We can build up group membership using our CSV file and have our users into groups that are already created within Jamf School. We can assign those devices and we can pre-build some smart groups to create a really dynamic and seamless workflow for deploying our applications and settings across our devices. So as we've kind of touched on already, these are the places that we can use user information within Jamf School. So we've already talked about enrolment and we've already talked about user assignment and why that's important. We can also use our user information within variables from Jamf School. So Jamf School has some built-in variables that can be used in different places within the Jamf School settings. primarily in our profiles, and they are there to be able to create customized and personalization workflows for our devices. So if we were to have a look at this, is just a snippet of the list of variables that are available to be used. But as you can see, most of those user variables are the variables that we've just built in the different ways by adding that user information into Jamf School. So we could use, for example, these variables across a profile that is for the lock screen, so that we can display who it belongs to. Perhaps we want to put in a group or a class information to show what class it belongs to, so that when a student leaves their device out in the playground because they've been out taking photos for a project and they've popped it down on the ground, they've completely forgotten about it, you as IT or another teacher can pick that device up and see on the lock screen who it belongs to and take it back to them. So this information and these variables are really important for us to be able to create nice and easy ways for us to return devices, provide support to our users, and ensure that we know where a device needs to end up if it gets lost. So here is an example from your environment where Tom's created a template for that lock screen. So if we were to look here in the footnote message, we can see that a number of different variables have been used in this profile. So we can see that first one is our percentage name, which is the full name. So the full name of the student, as soon as they enrol, that's going to come through with the enrolment information, and we'll be able to display that on the lock screen of the device, along with the serial number, the product name, OS version, and the location that it belongs to, so the school location that it belongs to. We can also display the asset tag. So this is really useful information to be able to display on the device for it to be troubleshooted or to be returned to its owners. And then one of the most powerful things that we can achieve with our user information is smart device groups. So smart device groups allow us to assign apps and profiles to our devices with using criteria that comes from the device information or from the user information. So from the time of enrolment, you're able to create a dynamic workflow using these smart device groups and ensure that our devices, once they reach the student's hands or the teacher's hands, are ready to use and have all the apps that they need on the device. So let's first take a look at what a class looks like in Jamf School. So with our Apple School Manager information, we're able to pull across our class information from Apple School Manager. So here you can see a list of classes that have been created, and we can see that the source is Apple School Manager. We can see that they have one student, one teacher, or two students and one teacher assigned to them, and these ones have actually been set up for shared iPads, so we can see how many iPads have been assigned to those classes. We can see all of this information is populated from the Apple School Manager class, so class information. So it's called the class roster information that comes from Apple School Manager, and as you can see, it's assigned the correct user as the teacher and the correct user as the student. So that information comes across in that class information. What we can do with that class information is we can create a smart device group that says this user is a member of a class as a student from one or more classes. So for example, we might want to we might have a class that's for our year 5 students or our 3 classes for our year 5 students. We want to make a smart device group that is for all of our year 5 devices. So in here, we can say the user is a member of the class as a student for all of our year 5 classes and select each class in this list. And that will put all of your student users into that group. You can then use that group to assign your profiles and your apps that you want to assign, that you want to end up on those devices. And the final option that we have for using, and why we have student user information in our Jamf school environment, is for shared iPad. We all know that shared iPad needs for us to assign students that should be part of the class, for them to be able to select their icon and log into that shared iPad. So as you can see, when we bring across information from Apple School Manager, we're able to add in that managed Apple ID, which is what is used for authentication into our shared iPad or even into Apple Classroom. So this information is layered on top of the Jamf school profile information and added in there with the managed Apple account or Apple ID that is for that student. So this allows us for, once we've got all of that class information built out, then if we were to be using Apple Classroom or on those shared iPads, the students would be able to select their icon and only see their icon on the iPads that were assigned to their class. So I am just going to pivot a little bit now that we have discussed students and teachers user information and how that can be used to create really dynamic workflows and ensure that our devices have users assigned to them so that we can identify that inventory information, and also to create those workflows that mean that we can create personalisation and customisation without IT having to go in and individually manage each device and each group that the device is in. So we also have, as I touched on at the beginning, administrators within Jamf School. And these administrators are traditionally your IT admins like you that have been created inside Jamf School. And as an IT admin, you probably have quite a broad permission base, but we can actually create some different roles within Jamf School to empower a teacher or an education technology leader with the ability to do some Jamf School actions so that we can reduce the burden on our IT teams. Perhaps we want to allow our EdTech team to be able to clear passcodes or assign apps to students or edit basic user information. So we're going to have a look at how we can do that within Jamf School. So within the administrators area within Jamf School, we do have access to an area that's called roles. Now within roles, you can create, as the name suggests, different roles for people to have access to the Jamf School console. So this is what they can do, what features they have access to within the Jamf School console. So here we could create a new role that is has some limited privileges to be able that we might give to an EdTech leader or a teacher who is more interested in supporting the iPads, or perhaps we have some on-site help desk team people that we only want to have limited access to our Jamf School environment. We can create some different roles based on that. So here we have an example of an EdTech leader and what we would think is a recommended number of permissions. So this list is just a snippet of what you can see, but you can see there's some overall access rights and rules that are available for us to allow, edit, add, create, delete. We have, as administrators, we have full control of what we want this role to be. So for an EdTech leader, we might want to allow them, we would definitely want to allow them to be able to read the device information. So that would mean they can see the inventory of the devices and click into the device and see who it belongs to and all of that sort of stuff. But we might also want to empower them to be able to clear the passcode so that that doesn't need a ticket to IT. They can do that. We know that that's safe. We know that we've got a passcode policy applied. So once the passcode is cleared, we know that it's going to ask for it to be reset. But if a student's forgotten it, this just alleviates the need for them to come to IT or to the help desk or for them to open a ticket, it can be resolved a bit quicker and get them back along their way and back to learning. We could also have them if we had Jamf Parent configured. So Jamf Parent allows our parents to put some restrictions onto the student devices. There are settings within Jamf School that will automatically clear those restrictions. But if you perhaps haven't made those settings correctly and you've allowed a parent to apply some restrictions during the student school time and you wanted to clear those restrictions, or perhaps there was something wrong with the device and it didn't clear them, you can clear them from within the Jamf School console. So perhaps we want to empower someone with the ability to be able to do that and send that clear parent command, parent restrictions command. The same with Jamf Teacher. So we have an app called Jamf Teacher where it gives the teacher the ability to set up classes with only the apps that they want available to the student at the time. And perhaps they've set their timer. When they create those restrictions, they set a timer as to how long that should be applied for. Perhaps they've set their timer too long and the student's gone to their next class. And then a new teacher has got the kids with their iPads, but they're still all set on the previous teacher's restrictions. We might want to empower someone that's not an IT person to be able to clear those restrictions. Users to be able to edit them, to be able to edit their name. Perhaps there's a name change and we don't need to enforce that through IT. We could empower someone to be able to do that. The classes, to be able to make changes to classes. You would only really consider this classes changes if you weren't using managed classes that were being synced across from Apple School Manager, because you can create classes manually within Jamf School, but those managed classes are being created from our Apple School Manager and synced across, so we may not want them to be able to edit. They maybe want to add shared iPads to classes. That might be something that you might want to consider. Assigning apps, setting options for the teacher and parent apps, settings for Jamf Teacher and settings for Jamf Parent, or allowing Jamf Parent to be used. So there are some examples of what you could build up for an EdTech leader, but you have the flexibility to create whatever type of roles that you want within your environment and what would suit you and your environment and what would empower your EdTech leaders or your teachers to be able to safely make some changes within Jamf School and take some burden off the IT team. The final thing that I wanted to touch on was incidents in Jamf School. And this is a bit of an underutilised feature, I would say, of Jamf School. So let's take a look and have a look what that looks like. So the incidents is available under the device. And this, can everyone still hear me?
Yeah, good, everyone.
Yeah,
Good, everyone.
all good,
Yep.
all good.
Cool. Sorry, one of my kids' AirPods just connected to my computer, so I was like, oops. Yeah, so the incidents area is logged against a device. So this might be that we want to log an incident to say that we received this device back to the help desk and it had a cracked screen. So within the incidents area, now I haven't showed the settings because they do need to be configured at the top level, but at the top level, Tom can create incident types. So we will have a look at what that looks like on the next screen, but we can create incidents that might be broken screens, so they might be hardware related, or they might be had to clear the passcode. Perhaps we want to log how many times a student is returning to have the same thing done, so we can capture some behaviour information. So once we are on that device record that we want to log an incident against, we just click on the register incident on the top right hand corner. And we get this screen. So here we can see that the device has automatically been populated, but we could change that device if we wanted to log it for a different one. The device status is the two options in there are keep and unassigned. Now, this is not just a record of I've unassigned this device. It will actually unassign the device. So if, for example, we were to have a broken screen and we were out of Apple Care and we were just like, that's it, we're going to write that one off, we could unassign that device from the user, and then we'd be able to assign a new device to them. So that incident type is where I said that can be created at the top level, and they're fully customizable. There's no preset options. You can create them as to whatever would be relevant within your environment. You can tick whether it will be covered under warranty, the date that it happened, a short description of what it was about, and if you wanted to immediately close this incident. So if you just wanted to use it as a logging place to say, a student came up and I cleared the passcode for them, this could be, you can tick that box and it will immediately close that incident at the same time that you're opening it. Otherwise, we can just click register incident and the incident will be logged against the device record for other people to come in and perhaps you're between multiple schools and you wanted to log an incident for the next tech that was going to come through so that they could see what's happened on that device. So this is what it looks like once we click register. We do get a summary of the incident that we've just created. We could add attachments here. So for example, if it was sent away for warranty, we could add the service ticket that came back from Apple or the repair company to show what was replaced. If it was like a computer, obviously if it was an iPad, there's not much to be replaced, but if it was a computer, keyboard was replaced or logic board or whatever was replaced, you could log that information in here under the attachments. And obviously here you can click on the green button on the left hand side to close the incidents once it's resolved. Now all incidents are viewable under the incidents list, which is on the left hand side in your main menu item, and here you will see all the incidents that are assigned for your location. So this is where you can use this as a register for incidents that may be open in your environment, or for the next tech to come along and see what incidents happened while they were not on site and what they need to work on. Now, most people may have an external ticketing system, but this might be useful for ongoing records of small tasks that happened against a device, or just to log that hardware information directly against the device record within Jamf School, so that you've got that history in the future. So that was pretty much all I had for today.